Hello.
Hello.
Welcome back. We are back again after, I don't know how many months.
It's been a little while.
It's been a little while.
A
A lot has happened, or not a lot has happened.
Well, we're getting there with the easing the restrictions.
We are.
Hope things have got a bit better for you and you've been able to catch up with some people.
Yes.
It's been good. And we are back for the next section of the very exciting book, which we are not hurrying through, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. And if you haven't bagged a copy of this yet, we would encourage you to do so, because it's really excellent. We are on a journey as Hamilton Your Church of apprenticing with Jesus and just trying to say, what does it look like to live like Jesus, to walk in his ways?
And this is our third section. So we have looked at Sabbath, and what was the first one we looked at? Silence and Solitude. So I wonder how those have been going for you, whether or not those have been challenging in the last 6 to 12 months. And that's a conversation to be had. We've enjoyed that ourselves, haven't we?
We've loved hearing about how you guys have been having a go at Silence and Solitude and having a go at Sabbath and trying to think, what does that look like for our family and those sorts of things, and just really kind of mining the riches of these practices. And they're not ends in themselves. They're not like, yay, let's get really good at Sabbath, let's get really good at Silence and Solitude. But the end goal of them all is to spend time with Jesus and to just walk closer to him and to know his peace and his presence in our lives. And that is what we are aiming for. And these practices, these ways of Jesus, help us along the way. So we're about to start a new one. Do you want to tell us what it is?
So we are looking at simplicity. So
what does that mean?
What does that mean? And where does it come from? That was our first question. So where does simplicity come from? What is the background of simplicity?
Well, so when I think of simplicity, I think of minimalism. And I think of watching those house programs where people like live in concrete bunkers with 3 sticks of very hard, uncomfortable looking furniture and no books. And I just can't cope with the houses that don't, my house not having books. So yeah.
Although I have to say, I quite like IKEA and the fact that everything is very simple, everything fits. So it's like a nice pattern.
They have lots of bookcases for books.
That's true.
Anyway, that's us. So this whole idea of simplicity, it's not a style of architecture,
no,
and it's not minimalism.
No. So what is it? What is simplicity?
Okay, well, I guess the question is, why is simplicity a way of Jesus, and what is it the antidote to? Is for me the more kind of thing. So it's not just like we do simplicity because Jesus said do simplicity, but like what does it remedy in our lives that Jesus knew and knows that we need? So is the opposite of simplicity complexity? No. Well,
why not?
I suppose you could use that word. I think it's not necessarily that it's not complexity, but it's busyness and too much. So simplicity is about paring back, and the opposite of it is having more. So it's the antidote to the problem of having more and wanting more.
And I guess going back to what we've talked about, silence, solitude, and Sabbath, which is we've landed on that whole thing of hurry. Yeah, and I guess it looks at that at the same time. So it's
like I know with a house full of children that this stuff seems to accumulate. There's more and more and more stuff, and then you spend more and more and more time like strategizing about how you're going to organize it and store it and label it and sort things out to get them out, because more things keep coming in. And it's like the more stuff you have, the more brain space it takes up, and the more physical space it takes up, and the more energy it takes up, because you've got to tidy it away and sort it and all the rest of it. And actually that it's not just about stuff, but that there is this thing of like, the more stuff we have going on in our schedule, the more hurried we are, the more frantic we are, the more we've got to remember, which means sometimes the more stressed we are because we forget things, and this whole problem of more. And it's really interesting. So John Mark Comer, we would love you to listen to his talk, his just first talk on this series, which is amazing. But he gives us a lot of history about how, even 100 years ago, people were like it was a needs-based society. So you had what you needed, and maybe you had some Sunday best, and that was great. But most people were working and having what they needed. And after the First World War, there was this whole, it was a conspiracy. It was a real thing with marketers and advertisers.
I think was it more towards it was the combination of both, wasn't it? First and second.
Yeah, where like big leaders of multinational corporations were like, we actually need to change people from a needs-based society to wants, to desires.
And that was because they wanted to maintain the factories that had started producing.
And they wanted to make money. So they were like, we need to convince people that actually they need all this stuff, which they don't really need. They just need more. And it was a whole, actually, we know advertising is kind of propaganda. And so the whole idea of propaganda is this technique to manipulate us to think that we need more all the time and to make us want more all the time. Actually, we don't need it. And so we live in this kind of society where everybody wants more all the time, and we fall into it all the time, don't we? And yet Jesus is saying that's not good for your soul. The antidote to that is simplicity, and simplicity in lots of different areas of our life. And we're going to look at some of those in the next few weeks, and at some practical things about how we can sort of have a go on those. But so, yeah.
Okay, so what was Jesus' take on more stuff and money?
Yeah, because it is tied up a lot with money.
Yeah, and he combines the two, doesn't he? A lot.
Yeah, so he talks about it. He talks about it a lot too. So in Luke 12, he says, "Watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions," which is like, ouch. And then again in Luke 12, he says, "Sell your possessions and give to the poor." And in Matthew 6, he says, "Do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes? Seek first God's kingdom." And he just goes on and on. There's the whole passage in Matthew 6 and Matthew 19, and Mark 4. He talks about these ideas of wealth and the fact that we think that we need all the stuff. Even then, they thought they needed all this stuff, but actually they didn't.
It feels a bit upside down.
Yeah. Because we think that if we have more,
that would feel better.
Yeah. And if you listen to John Whitcomb's talk, it's really fascinating. It gives you some statistics and some research on if that's really true, that's been done, which is really, really fascinating. But Jesus is saying, the worries of this life, the deceitfulness of wealth, and the desires for other things come in and choke the word, making it unfruitful. That's from the parable of the sower, which the kids shared with us last week, if you were in that service. But the worries of this life, the deceitfulness of wealth, and the desires for other things come in and choke the word, making it unfruitful. That's actually our desire for more can choke the fruit of God's word in our lives, and that's really kind of hits you in the heart really when you start to look at it. So Jesus has got this whole view, which is so countercultural. It was countercultural then, and it's very, very countercultural to us now, that actually more and more money and more wealth and more space and more of everything is not going to make us happy and not going to give us peace, which is, really interesting. So we'd love you to dig a bit deeper on that if you go to Connect Group. There's going to be some passages to look at this week about, what does Jesus say about money and stuff.
And I guess it even comes back to even in the first passage of Genesis 1, because you had Eve who looked at
she had everything.
She looked at the fruit,
the one thing she wasn't supposed to have.
And she was like, do you know what, that looks good for me, and it's going to benefit me.
I want more than everything that God's already given me. I want that too. So it's like we kind of do it without even realizing that we're doing it. Don't we? And I love how when we were talking about Sabbath, one of the things that came out of that was like, try and have a day where you don't keep wanting more. And so we have conversations, and you think, oh, I should really look and get one of those. It's like, no, it's Sabbath today. We're not wanting more of anything. We're just enjoying what we have. And it's been quite good for our family.
It's been really good. It's been really hard. It's been really challenging.
Not to have conversations about what the kids are going to spend their pocket money on, or what they want for their birthday and all those things.
Especially when, for example, you realise you need something, and then it's like, oh, but I can't look at that or get it ready until the next day.
Because actually we're just trying to say, be grateful for what we have and not be constantly wanting more on that day. So it's all flows together.
So that's going to be interesting. So again, in your Connect groups this week, you'll see there are a number of verses that we'll look at that encourage you to pursue what Jesus talks about. So what is simplicity not then?
Well, that's really interesting, because I know I said that I thought it was minimalism, but it's not minimalism. So it's not a style of architecture or design. It's not about what your house should look like. It's not that your house should look empty or not have any stuff in it at all. That's not what anybody is saying. We're not saying don't enjoy the gifts that God has given you, don't enjoy the beautiful things in the world, don't enjoy good food or, you know, nice surroundings or any of that. That's not what this is saying at all. So it's not poverty. It's not, you know, it's John Mark Clement says, it's not a bare home, an empty closet, a joyless life with no freedom to enjoy material things. That's not what we're talking about. The goal is the opposite. It's freedom. So we shouldn't be, you know, kind of binding ourselves with, well, I'm not allowed to have more because I can't have stuff, because that's against, you know, that's not it at all, because the goal is freedom, not,
it's really interesting, isn't it?
You know, not being kind of caged by not being allowed to have things.
Well, that comes back to your original point of having, the more stuff you have, in one sense, the less freedom you have, because you have to look after the stuff that you have, and therefore you're bound by that.
Yeah, but also you don't want to be bound by the idea that you can't buy stuff and you can't have stuff, because that's wrong, because it's not wrong. We're supposed to enjoy the gifts that God has given us and enjoy, you know, beautiful things, enjoy his world. So
comes back to that word grace again, doesn't it?
Yeah. And then also, it's not about organizing your stuff. So you know me, I love to organize. I love a bit of a clear out.
I like to plan for you to organize. And
if you are a parent, or particularly the parent who is in charge of children's clothes, you will understand that this is, you know, you're constantly having to organize and sift through and sort through and all the rest of it. But that's not what simplicity is. That might be a step on the way to it. But he, you know, he says it's great to do those things, and it's great to then find things that you can give away and get rid of. But I love this. He says, if you have so much stuff that you have to organize it, box it up, label it, and stack it in a way that cuts down on space, and the odds are you have too much stuff. So that's not true for some people. If you live in an incredibly small space, you need to have very good storage, and you know, we totally understand that. But
and I have to say, you're excellent at creating storage.
Thank you. But I still do get to the point where I feel like, you know, she's got too much. Like, you know, there's too much stuff to find a home for. But it's when
you don't notice something's gone, and then you go look for it, and it's like, oh, Cathryn, it was like. Yeah, so you weren't using it.
Months ago and you haven't noticed, it's fine. But it's not that. That might be steps along the way, and there are going to be some practical exercises to do in the next few weeks where, you know, that's going to be a part of where we, you know, sort of challenge ourselves to say, well, can I have a sort through and an organize? And it's not organising to find new homes for things, but it's actually saying, what do I not need that I can give away or I can get rid of? But it's not, that's not what simplicity is. So then he gives us some definitions. So Joshua Becker, who's a pastor, says the intention, simplicity is the intentional promotion of the things we most value and the removal of everything that distracts us from them. So if we most value God's peace and presence, what distracts us from that? And then simplifying our lives around those values. If we most value as well, you know, time with our family, or playing games together as a family, because that's a really big value for you and builds connection, then how can you simplify other things in life around those values? And Richard Foster and Mark Scandrett, in their book, say simplicity is an inward reality that can be seen in an outward lifestyle. I think you've used that in the Connect notes as well. It's choosing to leverage, so use to whatever degree you want or not want, your time, money, talents and possessions towards what matters most. So it's not just about money and stuff. It's about our whole life. So simplicity is a lifestyle. Again, it's a way of life, the way of Jesus. And you know, money and stuff are such big parts of our lives, aren't they? So they are going to definitely play a part in it. But it's also, you know, kind of looking at what we do and how we spend our time and how we spend our thoughts.
So you're kind of moving now onto this whole thing about, as an apprentice of Jesus.
Yeah.
You know,
what is our way of life?
What is our way
if we live in simplicity? Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where we're going to be, you know, sort of going to over the next few weeks. We're going to have some of you guys sort of share with us where you're at with this as well, which is really great. Just like, what does it look like for simplicity to kind of permeate through all the different layers of our lives and how we live, and our money and our stuff, but not just those by any means, because it's not just those that it's talking about. So I think that's going to be really exciting. I am quite excited about having it clear out. I always am, because there is less stuff to tidy up.
It's interesting, isn't it? So for you, it's you know, there's an excitement in that. For me, it's a challenge to reflect and go, actually, what things am I not using? And it's interesting that he, one of the practices he talks about having 4 boxes. I don't know whether we'll come to that.
Oh yeah.
But having ones that are
stuff to keep, that we use, stuff to give away,
that you're going to make money on.
Yeah, so you can sell stuff to give away, something else, and
they
go
to the bin.
Yeah, and then he has sentimental things, doesn't he?
So
it's a maybe box.
This is a maybe box,
because
which I find. I think that's where I
all your stuff will be in that box.
I was thinking, I need a bigger box.
But that's what interesting is because we all keep things for sentimental reasons, but that we don't use anymore, and that's really hard. And so he talks about that in his book, in the chapter on simplicity, and also in the talks. He's got a whole series of talks, which are really, really great. Would really encourage you to spend some time listening. So just do the first one if you can't manage the others. But he talks about this whole thing of how we have these emotional attachments to things, but it's not just physical things, is it? It's other things in life, and we're gonna work through this whole topic and kind of look at quite a lot of those and what simplicity might look like for us.
This week in the Connect group, if you not part of it, please get involved with Connect groups. It'd be great. There's going to be some great discussions. This week we're looking at the state of our heart. So where it comes from.
Simplicity of heart.
It's the origin. Our rest of our life is organised around something, and if it's not around Jesus, then what is it? So that's kind of what the conversation will be about this week. So look forward to next week, where we will be introducing who's being
Sharon and Rachel,
which is really exciting.
I'm going to be speaking to us next week, which is really great.
And what will they be speaking on?
I can't remember right now.
It's on the simplicity of heart. No, simplicity of
speech. and clothes.
Wow, so that'd be really interesting.
Yeah, good place to start with some practical things as well. Have a great week.
See you later.
Then.
Bye.